Ficelle, and what does ficelle mean in French? It just means, literally means like the thread. It's a thread, string. But then it was used figuratively to mean like the thread of a plot, or anything that held together, like we would say, it was all strung together. It was the thread of a plot, thread of an argument, a thread, an email. That's what it meant literally. So Henry James had used the term in that way. Ficelle, the supporting actors is what it means. Then Jacques Lacan had taken up the term. Jacques Lacan, a French post-structural psychoanalyst, in his seminars, he was theorizing how theorizing inter-subjectivity, how the subjectivity or identity of individuals was organized into groups. And the thing about psychoanalysis, kind of like Cora originally, it has to be talked about in so-called bastardized reason because it doesn't follow normal logic. We're dealing with the psyche. It doesn't follow instrumental or even formal or certainly even informal Aristotelian logic. It has its own logic, the logic of the unconscious. And at a certain point, to try to characterize this complex dimension, really it's like complexity theory dimension of human existence, Lacan had to run past where verbal discourse worked and had to move into mathematical kinds of representations. But again, he didn't want the geometrical, instrumental kind of mathematics of pure reason, but he wanted a more metaphorical kind of mathematics. And he borrowed topological mathematics, kind of, brought it into his own kind of poetic method. And he would use topological theory, particularly knot theory, and the tying and untying of knots with these strings. And he would come into his seminars and say, "Well, I brought my ficelle with me," and he would have these strings. And he said, "Now I'm gonna show you the topology of intersubjective relationships with my ficelle." And he would tie his ficelle around and do various structurings, which he said were not metaphorical, but were literal explorations of how different parts of the psyche would get in touch. Because about topological theory, it's sort of a plasticine geometry. You've got a sheet, and you imagine that one of the things that you can do with topological theory that Lacan was using, you can take a sheet and just crumple it all up and have this crumpled ball, and then this theory can tell you mathematically what points are in touch with what other points on that sheet. So there might be a point that would be up in the upper left-hand corner, another point in the lower right-hand side of the sheet, and when you crumple it up, they touch. It's like that. So it's sort of like the way the myhistorical allegory works. How does the Custer battlefield in my story relate? Well, here was this word ficelle. So already you can see it's linked up. The Custer history story is now linked up with the anagogical story of my discipline theory. Then there were further connections, with the personal life. The way my personal life got brought in there was, so I'm again continuing to look at the battlefield map. Very enthused now, and everybody knows that the commander-in-chief of the Native Americans was Sitting Bull, and he was the medicine man. He was a sort of overall chief. But then there were these generals, if you like, and everybody knows that the battlefield attack was led by Crazy Horse, the most famous warrior of the Sioux. But it turns out there were two other battlefield chiefs, and I've forgotten the third one, but the second one was a guy named Gall, Chief Gall, G-A-L-L. That was his name. He's a great big guy, and he was the second battlefield chief. Also had as much to do with the attack as Crazy Horse did. I didn't even know about him, but there was his name, Chief Gall. So it was like Gall attack. It was one of these arrows, like Crazy Horse attack, Gall attack, and whatever the third one, Standing Crow or whatever he was, attack. Well, this was interesting to me because my father died of gallbladder cancer. So suddenly I thought, so there's a connection with my personal life. The Gall attack is related to my father, and all of my personal stories were related to my relationship with my father, working for him at the sand and gravel plant, which was his business, place of business on the Yellowstone River. So is that, how many is that? So that's the history, the family, the theory. Well, the entertainment figure actually wasn't directly related. It was, as I said, it was Gary Cooper, in his Foreign Legion role. I mean, that connects in the sense that the American cavalry at those times was kind of like the American Foreign Legion. I mean, most of the soldiers in the 7th Cavalry were new immigrants. I mean, this is the way they recruited. They went to the docks. All the immigrants are coming from Europe. They recruited these people into the army, into the cavalry, and just shipped them right out west. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have families. It was a good recruiting ground. So there was kind of American Foreign Legion. Gary Cooper was in a number of French Foreign Legion movies, and I've explored his role in Beau Geste. And then later, in High Noon, I discovered a profound connection with Gary Cooper in High Noon, which we can go into also. But the point is that one thing leads to another. You find when you enter this data into the Maestri, and what I do in Maestri workshops is the first thing we do is just go through the 4 discourses and just enter in information based on these figures that we identify with or these problem areas of these different levels of the discourses. And then you start looking for any kind of repetition of a signifier, of a shape, and of an object, and in narrative theory, in allegorical theory, there is usually a prop that circulates and starts gathering, through the narrative, starts gathering up features from the different discourses that allegories hold together. But the fundamental structure of the santome or the symptom or the signifier of the Maestri is aesthetic. Reflecting a kind of and what is it like when you make a Maestri? What's the experience of making a Maestri? It is the experience of epiphany. It's the experience of eureka. When you see these things go together, it is the experience of suddenly seeing a connection. I mean, classic definition of an epiphany is, or a eureka experience, is things that you didn't think went together at all go together somehow. Oh, they're connected. It is a kind of experience of destiny. It's kind of the experience of divination when you see the connection between your own personal situation and some collective story. There's this feeling of fate, that there's some magical connection there. And it's not magical in our terms in any superstitious sense. It's just like, oh, these stories go together. It's just like I live in Xanadu, or my world is connected with this world of Custer or this historical life of my community, and it just creates a representation which supports a kind of level of invented thinking. I mean, the way I think of it as a pedagogy is if people are going to go out and make new discoveries, they're going to solve problems in new and creative ways, they better have some experience with Eureka, because in other words, they have to have some experience about how to break the barriers of relevance that have kept other people from solving the problems and connect things together that haven't been connected before. Well, if you've never done that before, you're not going to do it. The things that stops innovation is relevance. You see, it's not relevant. What is, the Custer battlefield map, how is that relevant to solving, the problem of the spectacle? It's not relevant in that direct sort of instrumental way. But it turns out that it's relevant to my imagination, and if I'm going to address this discipline problem, I need to use my imagination. I need to look at irrelevant dimensions and see the connection that I didn't see before. And I get some practice in doing that from doing the Maestri.
Take a break?
Yes, that's a good time. Because